everybody. I am Robert Pointer. I'm a Propellerhead here at the Winter NAMM 2007. We are in the Propellerhead booth. Very happy to introduce Arabian Prince. Woo. Yeah. Very excited for that. Thank you so much for being out here with us today. Of course, of course. So let's give a little background. I mean, a lot of people know who you are, but I think it's worthwhile to talk about some of your history and where you came from.
One of the first DJs on the West Coast back in the early 80s, so I'm showing my age. Producer of a couple of hits, Supersonic, a member of the group N.W.A with Dre and Cube and all of those guys, and also known as Professor X on the electro scene.
Right.
And just an all-around nice guy.
Of course.
Reason.
We like that. And so based on what you've been doing in the past, now you're really doing a lot of new things based on your experience now. What are some of those new things that you're doing now?
Well, now, I've started a video game company and I'm using Reason a lot to do some of the music and sound effects and that because it's really cool, it's portable, and I'm able to, do a lot of the stuff in different locations than being stuck in the studio.
Right,
and all of my, new school electro stuff that I'm doing around the world now is, 100% in Reason. A lot of people don't believe it, but I'm using Reason exclusively now because it's just an easy tool to use, and I'm still able to get the sounds that I want out of it.
Right. So, and in fact, I think, don't you have some records out on Clone Records, I think, that are actually all done in Reason?
Right. I have a couple of songs out on Clone Records, Static, and a remix of one of my Innovator songs from back in the day, released on Clone. Both of them went to #1. Also, I just signed a deal with Stone Show Records, my buddy Peanut Butter Wolf, and we did a couple of remixes in Reason, and I'm actually going to complete my Professor X album and a couple other projects in Reason for Stone Show.
That's exciting. So I know a lot of people, they come here and they hear you talk, and I've heard you actually talk a few times. I'm always impressed by the sort of where you came from, and I think it's important if you could talk a little bit about when you said, Reason, this is my tool.
Yeah.
As opposed to all the analog gear and everything that you had been using way back in the day.
Well, like I tell people, I always joke about it, but it's the honest truth. One, my electrical bill was too high from all that analog gear. Because, once you get it set up and get it working, you don't want to cut it off. Because once you cut it off, it may never cut back on.
Right.
Or one day you'll cut it on, all of a sudden you've got this ground hum. Like, where did that come from? Or, Reason, I don't get that. It's just there. Another reason is, I like cleaning the house and doing work, but I'm not a maid and I don't like dusting. And every day you gotta dust off your equipment, dust off all your gear and stuff. I hated that as well.
Right.
But the main reason I switched to Reason was when I found out that I could get the same sounds. I didn't think I could at first. I'm like, how could I do it? But as I listened to the software sense and I listened to the drum machines and the samplers, I'm like, man, this is really a powerful tool. And did some tests, I did some stuff analog, did some stuff in Reason, and the only difference I could tell is it sounded better.
Right.
So that's when I was, hooked.
Awesome. Now, everybody sort of, Reason is, ultimately configurable based on what you want.
Right.
And one of the things that we always notice when we see different users, everybody's got the Reason rack configured in a certain way. Right. So our question to you is, what's your Reason rack look like?
Well, it's funny. When I first started, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna build this rack and I'm gonna save it. So every time I load it up, I've got a rack. Now I'm just kind of like, okay, it depends on my vibe of the day, but always, every single time, it's right-click mixer, right-click drum machine, because that's it. Back in the day, that's all it was. It was like, okay, turn on the drum machine, make a beat. Now I've got a beat, do some music, you know what I mean? So the same thing here is for me, is I put in a mixer, I add the drum machine, and then I just go from there, get the vibe and the groove I want, the tempo, and then I start building the music,
Yeah. So let me ask you, in terms of Reason, we have the Combinator, got the Maelstrom synth, and things like that. Do you have a favorite, patch or synth, or even a technique that?
Well, like I said, it's just a force of habit. It's like Subtractor is always the first one I put in, and I'll find a nice bass sound in the Subtractor. And if I can't find it in the Subtractor, then I'll move to the Maelstrom. But it's always seem to find something in the Subtractor.
Right.
And I find something there, and then I'll use the Maelstrom, not because it's different or because I'm like, okay, let me just alternate here. It just allows me to just create.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is I'm able to use so many different, synths, and I can go into the Combinator and do all kind of cool stuff as well.
Right.
At home, I couldn't do that. I have to okay. Now I got to hook up this keyboard, make sure that, MIDI channel, it's a headache.
Okay. So can you show us maybe just an example of what an Arabian Prince setup looks like on one of your songs?
This song is one of the songs that was actually released static, and pretty much how I start, like I said, I always start with a mixer, and as you notice here, I try to get away with as few tracks as possible.
Okay.
Because I'm lazy. I don't want to do much work. I want to get it done.
Right.
So, you know, if you notice here, I've only got one mixer, so that means I've only got 12 tracks of stuff in here, and that's pretty much it. We're actually 14, but you know, I've got my thing. And I throw in my mastering suite so I can start tweaking on my final output as I go along. I've got a couple effects in here that I throw in, you know, to help affect my bass lines or affect my drum patches and stuff like that. Always have a little distortion going on to kind of just grunge it up just a little bit, give it that little sound. Then I throw in my drum machine, which no matter what drum machine patch I use, you're always going to find some 808 sounds in here somewhere. I don't think I've ever done a song that didn't have at least one 808 sound.
Well, let's be clear about this, right? You had, or you still have something like 6 808s, but they're just archived, right? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I've already gone through my 808s and I've sampled all the 808 sounds.
Okay.
And when I actually do a drum pattern, and I'm telling the people out there this is a secret, and if you use it, we'll have problems, you'll have to pay me. No, never mind. But for the most part, I sampled all my 808s, and when I do my drum patterns, I use more than one drum, more than one bass drum, let's say. So, because an 808 is an analog piece of equipment, so every time that drum kit hits, it's a different drum sound. It's not that same, you know, digital drum kit. It's an analog hit, so it may be boom this time, and it may be boom, you know, depending on how close the 808 kicks are together.
Right.
So what I do is I actually use 5 or 6 or 8 different bass kicks in one sequence to give it that analog feel, and it actually makes it sound better in a club or on a record.
So I just want to again thank you for coming out to NAMM and representing for us.
Thanks for having me out here.
We're quite honored to have the Arabian Prince here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And now can I eat? I mean, you guys told me I couldn't eat until
not on my dollar, but hey, you can go eat it what you want. Thanks again, everybody. This is Arabian Prince. I'm Robert Pointer, Director of U.S. Markets for Propellerhead.
Sexy chocolate.
Talk to you soon.